The lyrics to the theme song of a TV show I watched a few years ago included these words: "Think of all the roads. Think of all their crossings. Taking steps is easy. Standing still is hard." Every time I heard those words, as well as the times they still become an earworm in my head that I cannot shake, I think about how true they are for so many of us. When it comes to the journey of life, all the roads we've been on, all the things we've done, as well as the things we both have to do and want to do, standing still can be hard. For some of us, even if we aren't sure where we are going or how we are going to get there, we'd rather be moving, taking some kind of step forward. This can especially be true in times of stress, anxiety, or worry. Even if we aren't sure what we should be doing, it feels like we should at least be doing something. For the past few weeks, we have been exploring the story of Moses. So far, this story has been full of action. A lot of steps have been taken, and a lot of roads have been crossed. Today, I want to pick up with a story that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. After a series of plagues, Pharaoh finally agreed to let the Israelites free from their bondage of slavery in Egypt and allow them to leave. When that decree was made, it was definitely not the time for the Israelites to stand still. It was the time to move and move quickly. So quickly, in fact, that the dough they had made for that day had not yet had the time to rise. The people just had to grab it and carry it with them until they made their first camp. When they did so, they baked the dough, creating thin pieces of unleavened bread that was similar to the matzah bread you can buy and eat today. A bread which remains an important part of the Passover feast, serving as a reminder of the hurried exodus the Israelites made when leaving Egypt. But they did not stay long at this first camp, as this was not yet the time to stand still, even for a moment. They needed to escape, and to help them find their way, the Lord led them with a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, not long after the Israelites had left, Pharaoh changed his mind about letting them go. He gathered his entire army, including over 600 chariots, and began to pursue them. The army caught up with the Israelites just as they were approaching the Reed Sea, also called the Red Sea. It was then, at that very moment, they absolutely needed to keep moving, that they were forced to stand still because they had nowhere to go. The sea was in front of them, and the Egyptian army was behind them. Understandably, the situation left the people of Israel in a panic. And as they scurried around trying to figure out what to do, they began to feel more and more trapped, and they became more and more angry until they began crying out against Moses and even against God, saying that it would have been better to be enslaved in Egypt than to die in the wilderness. But Moses said to the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the deliverance that the Lord will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have to only keep still." In that particular moment, I can't imagine anything harder to do than keeping still. I'm not sure what I would have done, but I'm fairly confident that stillness would not have been at the top of my list. When I am confronted with a situation that causes me to feel like my back is against the wall in any way, I tend to be restless until I find my way out of the corner. I will often just start doing something, anything, even if I'm not sure what I'm doing or where I'm going. Because in those moments where life feels stacked against me, taking steps, any step, is easier for me than standing still. Of course, moving just to be moving sometimes leads me into places that not only fail to bring resolution, but make matters worse because my steps weren't really thought out. I just started walking. I leapt before I looked. Have you ever been there? Have you ever been so eager to get to the other side of whatever it is that you are facing, whatever sea you have to cross, that you will do anything to start the journey? even if you don't know where you're headed. If you've ever been in that place, have you ever taken steps you wish you hadn't? Said or done something that didn't help the situation? Written an email or something on social media that you really should have slept on before hitting send or posting? While there are situations that call for fast response, times when we need to move so quickly that there is no time to let the dough rise, there are also times, even when our backs are up against the wall and things look really, really bad, that the best thing we can do is to slow down, to calm down, to just be still. Because sometimes the only way to move forward is to first stand still long enough for the right path to be made clear. When the Israelites found themselves in that moment, the message of God was clear. Do not be afraid. Stand firm. I will fight for you. All you have to do is keep still. In fact, it is your stillness that will save you. Then, as that promise was still ringing in their ears, the pillar of cloud that had been going before them moved and took its place behind them, standing in between the Israelites and the advancing Egyptian army. As darkness fell, the cloud remained a barrier between the two camps, lighting up the night and protecting the people of God. And things became really quiet. Really quiet. The people began to breathe. Their fears began to ease. And there, by the water's edge, they not only stood still, but a stillness surrounded them. In the midst of that stillness, the Lord commanded Moses to stretch out his hand over the sea. And as he did so, a strong east wind began to blow until the water began to separate, forming a wall on each side with dry land in between. It was a path forward they never saw coming. And it was a path that could only come once they had been still long enough for it to be made clear. With this new path before them, the time for stillness was over. And the Israelites began to move once again. About the time they neared the other side, the Egyptian army entered the sea in pursuit. But the Lord made their way difficult, returning the dry land to mud so the wheels of the chariots got clogged, making them difficult to move. When all of the Israelites had reached the other side, the Lord told Moses to once again raise his hands over the sea. And when he did so, the water came crashing down upon the Egyptians, washing away the entire army. As they were gathered by the water's edge, the Israelites stood still once again. But this time, it wasn't because they had to. It was because they could. As they stood there, Moses, the man who struggled to speak because of some kind of impediment, began to sing. His voice breaking the silence and filling the air with song. And all the people of Israel joined with him. It was a song of praise, of hope, and of thanksgiving. After they sang, a woman named Miriam took a tambourine in her hand and began to play. Other women began to join her, and then they began to dance, because just as there are times when we need to stand still, there are also times we need to dance. I love this part of the story. The Israelites had been enslaved in Egypt for 430 years. The back-breaking labor they were forced to do left them too busy to ever be still. And the oppressive conditions under which they lived left them with little, if any, reason to dance. Then, after a harrowing escape, which led them to a place that they thought was the end, a place where their backs were against the wall and all hope seemed lost, God intervened, delivering them in the most miraculous of ways. Now, even though they were still in the wilderness, they were finally free. And their hearts were so full of joy, they could not help but sing and dance. I find this to be one of the most beautiful scenes in Scripture, and I get it. I get it because there have been times in my life where things are just so good that my heart and spirit become so full that I have no choice but to dance. To be clear, I'm not talking about literally dancing. I'll hit the dance floor on occasion, but the situation has to be just right for me to do so. And when I do so, I'm not very good at it. But that doesn't mean I don't dance on a regular basis, because sometimes dancing is just as much a soul thing as it is a physical thing. And there have been so many days that my soul has danced. I danced the day I graduated seminary. I danced the day I was ordained. I danced the day my sons were born. And I danced the day I was married. And on that day, the situation was right. And we all danced until we couldn't dance anymore. And by the end of the reception, even the catering staff was all out there with us. It was without question the most fun, celebratory night of my life. My guess is that whether or not you like to literally dance, there have been moments where life has had your soul dancing as well. Moments when your spirit was so full that the song of your heart played a tune that lifted you up and caused your spirit to be moved in celebratory joy. I also would guess that those moments are among the best experiences of your life. Friends, it is good and right that we celebrate the joys of life. It is good and right that after we've been through a journey, after we've moved from here to there, after we've experienced the joy of something good, even if small, that we allow ourselves to dance. It is also good and right that when someone we know is dancing because of a joy in their life, that we dance with them, that we share their joy, and that we join them in the gift and blessing of that moment. After all, while dancing alone is fine, dancing with others is always the most fun. There is so much for us to learn from this scene in Moses' life. For me, it serves as a great reminder that while there are definitely times in our lives that call for action, that call for us to take quick and decisive steps, there are also times in life when the very best thing we can do is be still. For a lot of us, when faced with any kind of challenge or journey, that can be hard. Taking steps, whatever they may be, is often the easiest course of action because it makes us feel like we are moving, that we're getting somewhere. But again, sometimes the place taking steps gets us is not where we really want or need to be. May today's story serve as a reminder that even though standing still is hard, sometimes it is only by standing still that the clear and right path can make itself known before us. Then, when that path is made clear, we can move with a stronger sense of purpose and of knowing that even if it takes us into unknown waters, we are not alone. The Spirit of God is with us. Maybe, just maybe, if we take this approach when we are facing a challenge of our own, we are more likely to get to the other side of it. And my hope for all of us is that once we do, we will stop once again and take the time to sing and dance for all that God has done for us. Amen.